Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into how people have overcome depression.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And get this, our source material. It's actually a Reddit thread.
Wow, so we're getting like real people's unfiltered experiences.
Exactly. It gets raw and real.
Yeah,
People share their stories, their strategies, and honestly, it's pretty inspiring.
I bet you see a lot of different approaches in a thread like that.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's
There's
just,
no one-size-fits-all solution.
yeah.
Everyone's path is unique. Like this one user, they took a super holistic approach.
Oh, really? Like what kind of things did they do?
Everything, medication, therapy, hiking, even moved to a new city, met new people. They even talked about how much sunshine and healthy food helped.
Wow, that's a whole life makeover.
Right. And they mentioned listening to Alan Watts, which is interesting because he popped up in a few other comments too.
Huh. Isn't that interesting? It makes you wonder what it is about Alan Watts that resonates with people going through depression.
Yeah. Maybe it's his whole philosophy thing or his focus on mindfulness and living in the moment. Whatever it is, it seems to have helped them.
For sure. Makes you want to check him out, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, but this next one I think a lot of people can relate to. It's about overcoming depression through exercise.
Hmm.
But they started super small.
I love that I'm all about small steps.
Me too. So this person, they started just by walking to the store every day.
That's totally doable. It's amazing how just getting into that daily habit can make such a difference.
Right. And it's funny, at first they were actually buying unhealthy food on those walks.
Oh no. Hey, at least they were walking.
Exactly. It's about building that momentum. They eventually started making healthier choices, but they said they felt so embarrassed buying the same unhealthy snacks every day that it actually pushed them to make better decisions.
That is hilarious. I think we've all been there.
Totally. Okay, but let's talk about a different kind of motivation. We have this user who actually copes with depression through humor.
Oh, I love that laughter is the best medicine, as they say.
Right, but get this. Their motivation is that their survival annoys other people.
Whoa, that's dark humor right there.
Uh,
But you know what? I get it. Sometimes you gotta find anything that sparks a little motivation, even if it comes from a weird place.
I agree. And laughter, no matter where it comes from, can be so powerful. But not all depression is a lifelong struggle.
Yeah.
Some people experience situational depression where it's tied to external circumstances.
That's so true. Sometimes it's not a chemical imbalance or anything. It's just a reaction to a really difficult situation.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Like this one user, their situation improved after about 4 years and their mood followed. It shows you that recovery can be a process, and sometimes it's about getting through a tough phase.
Definitely. And another commenter echoed that feeling of helplessness that can come with situational depression. Like there's nothing you can do but ride it out.
Okay, now get ready for this one. This user discovered their partner was actually the source of their depression.
Oh, wow. That's heavy. It's a reminder that we have to pay attention to the dynamics in our relationships. They can really impact our mental health.
Big time. And sometimes the best thing you can do is remove a negative force from your life. This user, their depression practically disappeared once they realized this. But guess what? Their partner actually reacted negatively to their newfound happiness.
You're kidding? That speaks volumes about that relationship.
Seriously. But let's switch gears and talk about anger. This user actually channeled their anger into motivation to fight back against depression.
That's interesting. I can see how that could be powerful, like turning that negative energy into fuel.
Totally. But another commenter pointed out that relying on anger can be tricky. It
Ah.
can be a double-edged sword, you know?
Yeah. You got to find healthy and sustainable ways to channel those emotions, for sure.
Okay, now this one's really interesting. This user found success by faking happiness until it became more genuine.
Really? Like they just acted happy even when they weren't feeling it.
Exactly. It's like a behavioral hack.
Mhm.
It's the idea that actions can actually influence feelings.
That's pretty wild. So they were basically retraining their brain to be happy.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about this whole idea of curing depression. This sparked some debate in the thread.
Yeah, I bet some people believe it's possible while others think it's something you manage.
You got it.
Yeah.
So some users, especially those who've dealt with it for a long time, they believe that managing and coping are the realistic goals.
Yeah, that makes sense. It becomes a part of your life.
Right. But then there are those who believe in full recovery and share their stories of achieving lasting change.
So inspiring, right? Both perspectives are valid, though. Everyone's experience is unique.
Totally. Like, we saw people who found lasting freedom from depression through years of therapy for trauma, and others who found success with ketamine therapy.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
It really emphasizes the importance of personalized approaches, finding what works best for you as an individual.
Totally. No cookie cutter solutions.
One comment that really hit me was from a user who redefined the goal as living well regardless of depression.
Ooh, that's powerful. It's about acceptance and resilience.
Exactly. They said happiness comes in bursts, and that's okay. It's about accepting yourself and finding ways to live a fulfilling life, even with challenges.
I love that message. It's so important.
And let's not forget all the other things people mentioned. Writing down their worries, mindfulness, surrounding themselves with positive people, finding meaning, even trying new medications like Ozempic.
It's like a whole toolbox of coping mechanisms, right?
Exactly. It's a testament to human ingenuity and the fact that we're all in this together trying to figure things out.
Yeah, and sharing what works and what doesn't.
And that's what makes these kinds of discussions so valuable. It's a reminder that there are so many possibilities, so many paths to explore. But as we've seen, what works for one person might not work for another.
For sure. It's about finding what resonates with you, experimenting with different approaches, and tailoring your strategy to your own needs.
Exactly. So what are your biggest takeaways so far? What's really resonating with you?
That's a good question. You know what really stands out to me is this theme of agency that runs through a lot of these stories. It's about recognizing that even when things are really tough, we still have the power to choose how we respond, to seek help, to make changes, and create a life worth living.
It's so empowering, isn't it? It reminds us that we're not defined by our diagnosis or our struggles. We have this capacity for growth and healing and change.
I know, it's pretty incredible. And that message is more important than ever these days with so many people facing mental health challenges.
Definitely. So where do we go from here? What can our listeners do with all this information?
Well, first of all, if you're struggling, please know that you are not alone and there is help available. Reach out to a mental health professional, talk to someone you trust, explore online resources, or even try some of the strategies we've discussed today.
And remember, there's no shame in asking for help. It's actually a sign of strength.
Absolutely. And if you're not struggling yourself, but you know someone who, just be there for them. Listen without judgment, offer practical help, and remind them that they're loved and cared for.
Sometimes just knowing that someone cares can make all the difference. We've covered a lot in this first part, but we have so much more to explore.
Definitely. We'll be back with part 2, where we'll delve deeper into specific therapies and practical tips for managing depression. And don't forget to check out that Reddit thread for even more perspectives and insights.
Yeah, you might find a nugget of wisdom that really resonates with your own journey. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive. You know, I'm still amazed by how many different experiences and strategies people shared in this Reddit thread. It just shows you there are so many ways to approach depression.
Totally. It's like everyone's finding their own unique path to healing.
Yeah.
And speaking of different paths, I was really interested in all the different therapies people mentioned,
Oh, yeah, for sure. There were some pretty unconventional ones in there.
like ayahuasca ceremonies. That definitely caught my attention.
Yeah, that's a pretty intense one.
What exactly is ayahuasca?
So it's this traditional Amazonian brew that's used for spiritual and medicinal purposes. It's known to induce these like really profound altered states of consciousness.
Well, so people use it to like process trauma and gain insights.
Exactly. It's not for everyone, of course, but it just goes to show you the range of approaches people are exploring these days.
Definitely. Another therapy that caught my eye was EMDR. Have you ever used that in your practice?
I have. It's actually a pretty fascinating technique. It's becoming more and more recognized as a treatment for trauma and PTSD.
How does it work?
So basically, it involves bilateral stimulation, which is usually done through eye movements while the person is processing traumatic memories.
Interesting. So it's like helping the brain reprocess those experiences in a way that's less intense and less negative.
Exactly. The goal is to reduce the emotional impact of those memories.
That's incredible. And then there's ketamine therapy, which we talked about a bit before. I've heard that's showing a lot of promise for treating depression, especially cases that haven't responded to other treatments.
Yeah, ketamine is traditionally used as an anesthetic, but recent research has shown that it can have really powerful antidepressant effects.
And it works pretty quickly too, right?
Yeah, that's one of the remarkable things about it. Unlike traditional antidepressants that can take weeks or months to kick in, ketamine can have effects within hours or days.
Wow, that's amazing. It's really exciting to see how much progress is being made in mental health.
Yeah.
But beyond therapy, I loved all the practical tips people shared, like that one about setting alarms for self-care.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It's so easy to get caught up in the daily grind and forget to take care of ourselves.
Totally. Even small acts of self-care can make such a big difference in our mood and outlook.
For sure. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Things like getting enough sleep, eating a healthy diet, spending time in nature, those are all so important.
Absolutely. And what about the power of human connection? It seemed like a lot of people in the thread emphasized how important it is to have a supportive network.
Oh, absolutely. We're not meant to go through this alone. Having people we can talk to and rely on can be so crucial.
It's about feeling understood and knowing that you're not alone in this.
Exactly. And sometimes it's the simple things that can lift our spirits. Like one user talked about how much they love watching comedy movies to boost their
Oh
mood.
yeah, laughter is the best. And another person found solace in listening to upbeat music.
It's all about finding those things that spark joy and bring a little light into the darkness.
Totally. It's like building a toolbox of coping mechanisms. And this Reddit thread was full of great ideas.
It really was. And it's important to remember that recovery is a journey, not a destination.
That's so true. There are going to be ups and downs along the way. It's not always linear.
Exactly. What matters is that we keep trying, keep exploring, and keep believing that a better life is possible.
I love that. It's so easy to get discouraged when we face setbacks. But reminding ourselves that it's a journey and not a race can be so helpful.
Definitely. It's all about taking it one step at a time and celebrating the small victories.
You mentioned earlier that you were really struck by the theme of agency in these stories.
Mhm.
What stood out to you the most about that?
You know what really struck me was how many people, despite their struggles, found ways to take control of their experience, whether it was trying different therapies or changing their habits or even just reframing their thoughts. There was a sense of empowerment in their stories.
I totally agree. It's about recognizing that even when we're facing these huge challenges, we still have choices. We can choose how we respond. We can choose to seek help. And we can choose to make changes that move us towards a life worth living.
Exactly. And that's such a powerful and important message, especially today when so many people are struggling with their mental health.
Definitely. It's a message of hope and resilience that we all need to hear.
Absolutely. And speaking of hope, I think it's important to talk about mindset and self-compassion, which are such crucial elements in the recovery process.
You're right. Those are definitely key ingredients.
Yeah.
We'll have to save that discussion for the final part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. We'll be back to delve deeper into the power of mindset and self-compassion and how those inner resources can really contribute to healing and recovery.
Welcome back to our final part of this deep dive. It's been pretty eye-opening, right?
Totally. We've explored so many different aspects of overcoming depression, from those personal stories and therapies to practical tips and the power of connection.
Yeah, but before we wrap up, I really want to touch on something we haven't talked about yet. Mindset and self-compassion.
Those are so important. They're like the foundation for everything else.
Exactly. Like, you can try all the therapies and techniques in the world,
Mhm.
but if you're constantly battling negative thoughts and self-criticism, it's going to make things so much harder.
Absolutely. So how do you think those concepts played out in the Reddit thread?
Well, I was really struck by the people who talked about intentionally shifting their perspective. Like, even when it felt really difficult, they made an effort to challenge their negative thoughts and create a more positive outlook.
Do you have any examples?
Yeah, there was one user who decided to start viewing their depression as a temporary state. Like,
Uh-huh.
they called it a depressi, instead of just saying, I have depression.
Oh, that's interesting. It's like taking away some of the power of the label.
Exactly. By seeing it as something temporary, it opens up the possibility of change.
It's like a subtle shift in language, but it can make a big difference.
Totally. And we also saw some people who found strength in radical acceptance.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's about acknowledging the reality of your situation, even when it's painful, but without judgment or resistance.
So it's not about giving up or resigning yourself to a life of misery.
No, not at all. It's more about creating space for healing and growth by letting go of that struggle against what is.
Makes sense. There was one user who talked about embracing their depression, accepting it as part of their journey and focusing on living well regardless. That really resonated with
Yes,
me.
I love that. It's such a powerful mindset shift.
It is. It's about recognizing that we can still live fulfilling lives, even with challenges. It's about focusing on what we can control, like our actions and our choices, rather than dwelling on things we can't.
And that brings us to self-compassion, which is so crucial when you're struggling.
So true. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a loved one who's going through a hard time.
Exactly. So many of us are so hard on ourselves. We blame ourselves, we shame ourselves, we compare ourselves to others. It can be a vicious cycle.
It's like we become our own worst enemy.
And self-compassion is about breaking that cycle. It's about recognizing that we're all human, we all make mistakes, we all have flaws, and that's okay.
It's about offering yourself grace and forgiveness, especially when you need it the most.
And it's not about denying the pain or pretending that everything's fine. It's about holding space for your feelings and being kind to yourself even when you're struggling.
And the amazing thing is that research shows that self-compassion actually has tangible benefits. Like,
Yeah.
it's been linked to increased resilience, reduced anxiety and depression, and improved overall well-being.
So it's not just a fluffy feel-good concept. It can actually make a real difference in our lives.
I think this deep dive has been such a great reminder that there's no one right way to overcome depression. Every journey is unique, and what matters is finding what works for you.
Couldn't agree more. Whether it's therapy, medication, lifestyle changes, mindset shifts, or a combination of approaches, the key is to keep exploring, experimenting, and believing in the possibility of a brighter future.
I'm definitely walking away from this conversation feeling inspired and hopeful. And for our listeners, I want to leave you with this final thought. What act of self-compassion can you offer yourself today? Remember, you are worthy of love, care, and support, especially from yourself.
And thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it helpful and maybe even a little bit hopeful. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep believing in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow.